Aaron, this has turned into quite a couple of days because I don't know about you, but just looking at the election ballot heading into yesterday, at least locally in Ohio, not a lot going on, but some seismic activity nationwide, starting in the Big Apple and what we saw there with their new mayor. Just take us through some of your thoughts as you saw the election called last night in favor of, well, let's call it what it is, an openly communist mayor in America's biggest city.
An openly communist, a Muslim mayor, which we also have to be able to talk about that worldview as well. This was shocking. I think a lot of us going into the New York election saw that it was likely going to be Mamdani that was going to win. But the fact that he got over 50%, and the fact that he never really hid who he was, right? He was really upfront about what he stood for. Didn't run away from some of his really radical positions and views and radical friends. And New Yorkers elected him. I think for a lot of us today, if there was any doubt in your mind or any thought that the political winds were to the backs of conservatives and Christians, this has to be a wake-up call, right? 2024 was a massive election that so much good is coming from, but we can't fall into that lie that just because things went so well in 2024, that's the way things are going to go into the future. And there's so much, especially when you look at the worldview of Mamdani, that is terrifying for the future of the country.
And I don't know about you, I'm seeing some overlap here with this idea of being overly empathetic on the left as playing into this, because saw a lot of younger people, a lot of Gen Z going for Mamdani, and that certainly says something about what we'll be dealing with from the worldview side for decades now, because these are young 20-somethings that are voting this way.
Yeah, Mike, this is the most important part of what happened in New York. And it brings to stark contrast that the battle we have today is not about Republicans and Democrats. It's about worldviews, right? And we get that question wrong so often in America, is we think of things in terms of geopolitics, but we don't understand this is really a war over worldviews. And where are worldviews formed? Primarily in the home, in church, and in school. And across the country right now, we see all three of these areas under attack, and we're reaping the fruits of what's happened there, right? So we see the collapse of family in America today, and we see this disconnect between generations. We see the church under attack, especially in places like New York, in a lot of our inner cities. I mean, even just sitting here in downtown Columbus, we look at a lot of the old church buildings here. They're whitewashed tombs, right? They've been taken over by woke ideology, LGBT ideology. And then what we really see is the school system pumping out functional Marxists, right? I think for a lot of us, after Charlie's assassination, we were so encouraged by what we saw happening with TPUSA. Turning Point USA doubled in size. And that's so encouraging, and that's such momentum we want to see. I still believe these are the seeds of revival that we're seeing in our country today. But we also have to be honest about the nature of the battle before us. And the stats out of New York right now, Mike, are that 75% of people under 30 voted for Mamdani. Wow. Right? That is, he was carried to election by these guys, right? And there's a very real possibility that where we're sitting right now, in just a matter of months, we could have President Gavin Newsom, right? That's what's on the line. And so, yes, by all means, it is about turning out and voting, but it's also about getting serious about the worldview battle that's happening right now in our education system. It's why, for us, especially with CCV, the whole view around Christian education, and we have to tear down this public education system that's corrupting kids' hearts and minds. And teaching them to believe things like communism is a great idea, right? The idea that you have this one candidate in Mamdani that represents both Islam and communism, leading the largest city in America today, is terrifying. We have to be really clear about this, Mike. There is no country in the world that has been run by a communist worldview or a Muslim worldview, an Islamic worldview, that has not ended massive oppression and death, right? That's what's at stake here. And so often Christians, we pull punches on these things, But we're not helping anybody when we're not honest about every place that has tried communism or socialism has failed, and lots of people, millions of people have died. And meanwhile, there is not a Muslim-run country that is not a disaster area for human rights and does not have massive oppression of their people and murder, right? And in one guy, we have both of these worldviews united. And the reality is this 75% of young people that voted for Mamdani, that didn't happen by mistake. That didn't happen out of nowhere. That happened in large part because of a public education system that's not been teaching kids the truth around communism or the truth around Islam. And this is the nature of the battle we have today. And this is why things like choice, the backpack bill, things like the scholarship tax credit in Ohio, but then this national scholarship tax credit is our opportunity, and not just our opportunity, it's our mandate to save kids from a public education system, because these kids are going to become more and more the predominant voting bloc in America and are going to drive us off a cliff if we don't get into the worldview battle the right way.
Yeah. And the other piece to that is we need pastors speaking up too.
Yes.
Because to your point that you're making here, Aaron, we need to be able to call out evil when it's evil and not pull that punch just because it's somebody who's from a minority population or that type of thing. We need to be able to say with clarity, and we need our leaders in the pulpit saying with clarity, this is against the Bible, this is against Christianity, and we need to stand against it. And that's where so much of our pastoral training and ministry fellowship program and things like that are coming into play.
100%. And I think this is where worldview, we misunderstand the depth of what we're talking about when we talk about worldview, right? Worldview is not just what are your political positions on the key issues of the day, right? Worldview is how do you understand the purpose and design and function of the world around you, right? If you believe in an all-powerful, eternal, omniscient, omnipresent God who created everything, and his natural laws, his laws of gravity and nature and things like that are intricately intertwined with his moral law, you understand that there is a function and a purpose and a way that we are all called to live that allows for human flourishing, right? The idea of recognizing the inherent value and dignity of every human life formats every way that we build and order our life and our society, right? This was the predominant worldview of the founders of our country, right? And it's no surprise that at the same time that this is something Os Guinness has written about, at the same time the American Revolution was going on, which was based on Christian ideals, there was also the French Revolution that was going on that was based on really kind of atheist ideals and really seeds of Marxism in many ways. Mm-hmm. That revolution devolved into mass murder and all types of chaos and evil that perpetuated Napoleon Bonaparte and all these types of terrible things. What did our revolution bring here? A nation that has become, surely over time, a more perfect union, right? A nation that had its flaws and had its issues, but founded on these high ideals that's allowed us to root out a lot of those problems. The issue we're facing now today is that those foundational Christian values, Christian worldview that formed our culture and our country are now being not just eroded, but replaced by a communist worldview, or in some places like Dearborn, Michigan, an Islamic worldview. And again, I was thinking about this the other day. Conservatives always like to trot out the line, Mike, about every communist leader. Zoran Mamdani is a great example of it. Is just convinced they're going to be the first one to make it work, right?
They're going to do it right.
We're finally going to get it right. No one's ever actually done communism right before. But I really think there's something to be seen about, especially you look at under the Biden administration when we had millions and millions of illegal immigrants pouring into our country, right? And a lot of them from South America. No one ever asked the question of these folks, hey, it's a really dangerous and far hike to come from, all of these South American or Central American countries up into the United States. It's dangerous, all these types of things. Why aren't they trying to get into Venezuela? Venezuela is a lot closer for them to get to, right? It's right there. It's run by a communist dictator. And if communism is so great, why are they trying to come here and not there? And it's because communism fails and kills people And the American form of government, again, CCV exists because there's still flaws. We're not fully living up to the American ideal in America. We want to continue to make us a more perfect union. But we are the best thing going. But we won't be if people like Mamdani or people like Gavin Newsom gain control and continue their march through culture and politics.
And it would be one thing if this was only an election result in New York City, which is very liberal, but we saw some results out of Virginia too, and that's a state that has been blue, but we've also seen a Republican governor there lately, and they will occasionally go
Trump,
red.
Trump won there. Yeah, the Virginia one especially is concerning in a whole other way around Jay Jones, the Attorney General, right? So Jay Jones, in some ways, especially talking to my friends in Virginia, they really gave an all-out effort there, and it's always a tough cycle in Virginia after a Republican wins president. They have the election just a year afterwards, so there tends to just naturally be that momentum. But I think that the thing that was the most surprising was that Jay Jones won, and is by all accounts just a reprehensible individual, right? Talking about hoping his opponents were killed, that their kids watched it, and I mean, it just was the types of things, and not apologizing until it gets exposed, but not apologizing in the moment on it. The tribalism that's reflected there of saying, hey, this guy is unbelievably unqualified for being in office, especially in an age where political violence is on the rise, is just unacceptable and very concerning. And again, I'd say this is a temperature check of where our country is. And Mike, we've seen this in cycle after cycle in American politics, but Christians do this especially, that after an election gets won, and especially this was a big election in 24, right? Not only did Trump win in convincing fashion, but he also, we Republicans won the House and the Senate, right? Christians all too often say, okay, we did our job. Let's pack it up, and Trump's going to take it from here, or Bernie Moreno is going to take it from here. JD Vance is going to take it. And we see what happens if we check out or let our guard up even for a moment.
Yeah. So what's the call to action then? Like what's the big takeaway here in Ohio as we look at these two national stories, Aaron?
Man, I think it's a few different things. I think one, elections matter, right? And we can't let our guard up. We got to be keeping things driving forward on things like voter registration, all those types of things. But, we've seen this throughout American history. And I shared a devotion with the staff that maybe we could talk about here some other time. But I think in New York, there's a great example of this. If somebody would have told us in 2001 after 9/11 that in 25 years an Islamic communist would be the mayor of New York, we'd be blown away, right? The reality is it's because Americans don't understand the nature of the fight we have today, right? We thought that 9/11 was primarily a country-to-country conflict, right? Or a sectarian conflict of the United States versus Iraq, or the United States versus the Taliban, or things like that. But not understanding this is a worldview battle. This is a fight over ideas, right? And you can wage a fight over ideas without it being violent, right? That's what we do here, right? We wage a war over ideas in a public debate way, the way Charlie did, right? And that's the way we should be going about these things. But we need to talk about them in an open and honest way. And because we didn't take the worldview of Islam seriously enough, because we didn't take the worldview that is perpetuating a large part of the world and is growing into Africa, into Europe, and now in America, we've ceded so much ground. We're actually losing that battle, right? Mm-hmm. More and more. And unless we're willing to engage in that, and this is where, to your point with pastors saying, yeah, of course, we want to be kind to our neighbors. We want to display the fruits of the spirits and how we interact interpersonally with individuals we come across. Sure. but we also are not being loving to any of our neighbors if we say anything other than Islam is one of the most deadly worldviews when it's given power over a nation, and it needs to be wholly rejected in all its forms, and not play footsie with this dangerous ideology. That to me, that worldview fight. So getting pastors trained up for things like the Minaret Fellowship, getting kids out of public schools and into Christian schools by launching new schools or expanding the use of the scholarship tax credit, that's the most important thing, and that's the fight for the soul of our nation.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying too that yes, there is that sort of immediate reaction, the emotional response to what we saw last night, but we've also got to get people on alert for 2026, because
right.
Not only is it the 250th anniversary of our country,
right,
but it's going to be a pretty big election.
Huge election
in terms of Senate and House races.
Yep.
On the federal level. We've got a governor race here in Ohio, and how those turn out. We're not only talking about the direction of our country, but as you're pointing out with these worldview issues, Aaron, this is what is going to be the foundation of truth.
That's right.
For our society going forward. And that sounds like an overstatement, but if we don't take this seriously, that's how we got where we are right now.
That's literally how we got here in the first place. That's exactly right.
Yeah.